In September last year, the Grenfell Tower inquiry's final report laid bare how a chain of failures across government and the private sector led to that tragedy. Now, 8 years on, survivors are still waiting for justice. Johnny Harvey outlines some of the key issues affecting survivors and others affected.
8 years on from Britain's worst residential fire since the Second World War, and still so many issues remain unresolved for survivors and for the families and friends of the 72 people who died in Grenfell Tower. One key question is when justice will be done. Despite an ongoing police investigation involving up to 180 officers, files won't be passed to the Crown Prosecution Service until 2026, with any potential charges expected to be laid by the end of that year. And when will all remaining buildings deemed to be at risk be made safe? New figures from the London Fire Brigade show that nearly 1,500 buildings in London still have serious safety defects, meaning they would have to be evacuated immediately if there was a fire. Grenfell survivor Edward Defan expressed his frustration at the lack of progress made since the fire.
8 years ago, standing underneath the burning wreckage of Grenfell Tower, I was convinced that it would be the catalyst for societal change, that, you know, something so awful, which resulted in the horrific loss of 72 lives, could not happen without things changing. And yet, we sit here talking 8 years later on, people are still going to sleep in buildings that aren't safe. It's horrific. It's horrific to live with. You know, we need to create a legacy for Grenfell that means that people that live in social housing, people that live in high-rise blocks are treated with respect and live in safe buildings. And 8 years after Grenfell, that's still not happened. So it's almost like the priority is to get the tower down, but we can't really be bothered to sort everything else out. And that doesn't sit very well with me. If I had my own way, I would rip the shroud off the tower. I would expose it in its brutal nakedness, its brutal awfulness, and the brutal violence of the tower until we get justice. And I understand why that can't happen, but that's my own personal feelings.
Finally, there's the tower itself. Work is set to begin on its deconstruction, and attention turns to the design of the memorial. It's a contentious issue, and another potentially difficult moment in the legacy of this tragedy.
Well, joining us now is the former Labour MP for Kensington from 2017 to 2019, who is currently an independent councillor for the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, Emma Dent Coad. Emma, thank you very much for being with us. Good to have you on the programme. 8 years on, how do you assess the work the council has done to help those people affected?
Oh, it's been incredibly slow. If you read their PR and media, you think they'll be doing a fantastic job. But if you ask the people of North Kensington, they will tell you that nothing has changed. And some people will say it's got worse, which is pretty depressing, given the amount of money that has been spent in North Ken. And given also that the ward, Notting Dale ward, which is the ward of where Grenfell happened, has actually got poorer in the last 7 years, which is absolutely shocking. The people are poorer, their health is worse, their life expectancy is dropping, and mental health is absolutely appalling. And as I say, given the amount of money that has been spent there, what on earth they've been doing with it?
Well, we have had a response from the council who say we will not stop until we have improved our culture and met the challenge set for us by bereaved and survivors to become the best council for our residents as a lasting legacy to the tragedy. What would you like to have seen them be doing better? Where should their goals be? Well, as I said, their PR is fantastic. I mean, just a couple of months ago, we heard one senior Conservative saying, "Oh, we've been so generous with these people," as if we were asking for too much, and as if what people have been critical. What specifically would you like to see? You're a member of the council. You
Yes.
were a Labour MP at the time of the tragedy, and a Labour councillor. What specifically should they be doing?
They should be treating North Kensington people as if they were their own family and not looking down on them, which they still do. We've had public meetings recently where people are still being talked down to. They do not even understand that. They don't understand, and they expect people to be grateful for the pittance that they've got. It's really shocking. And in addition to that, they've got a whole programme of improvements here and there, and some of which are so bad that they've had to pay people compensation. Where is their improved building control? Why can't they procure the construction work better than they did before the fire? They have learnt nothing. There are two really shocking cases at the moment in North Kensington where people's homes are mouldy and rotten, and including Lankwest right next to the tower. They've been doing lots of work and people are living in misery.
And when you criticise them, as I'm sure you do, how do they respond?
Well, you know what, you always get outvoted, but I have quite a loud voice, so you have to keep on telling them. They will always make excuses, and actually behind the scenes they do have to improve this. So, you know, I say that just on basic things like procurement, and they're still penny pinching,
Joe, you are the local MP. What are people saying to you about what needs to change, and what have you been asking for from the government over the past year?
Well, the first thing is that people want justice, criminal accountability.
And we know that isn't going to happen at least for another couple of years.
The Met have said their timeline is autumn next year. Obviously,
before they possibly bring charges.
Before they possibly bring charges, and after that, of course, it could be a lengthy process. So we need to make sure that the Met have the resources and that there is political attention and pressure to bring that to a conclusion, because people expect to have criminal accountability for those responsible, and that hasn't happened. The second thing is, now we have the public inquiry and the government have accepted the recommendations, is we need to make sure that that actually leads to systemic change at the national level. I agree with Emma, we need to see it at the local council level, absolutely, as well, but we need to change the way that construction products are regulated.
And are you seeing that happening within government?
Well, the government have accepted all the recommendations, and for example, you know, personalised emergency evacuation plans for disabled people will now be rolled out. But the thing that I want to make sure, as a Member of Parliament, that's also in place is some independent accountability, so that government of whatever colour is not marking its own homework, and that means an oversight mechanism so that the recommendations from the inquiry are actually delivered, and it means a Hillsborough law so that there is a legal duty of candour for public officials, including in councils like RBKC, to not mislead investigators or the public, because we've seen this before. Hillsborough, infected blood, post office, Windrush, it happens again and again. So we need culture change at the national level and the local level.
Neil, there was huge criticism of the last government that they just dragged their feet on this. Are you confident that this government are going to move quicker?
Well, I think under Michael Gove, when he was the Secretary of State, I think we got to a good place. I think we're seeing the right direction of travel. I think some of the points you are raising, Joe, are very important, though. So, you know, from where my constituency is, this, you know, Kensington is not, it's not on our doorstep, and actually the fact that it was such a dramatic event, I think, caught the attention of people across London, and in particular the wider ramifications about building safety, building security. We did have a smaller but similar type of fire in my constituency in 2019. Cladding, the building just went up extremely quickly, and I have exactly the concerns that you were just talking about, Joe. Are we, you know, we're talking about very large numbers of houses being built, or flats realistically being built, particularly in London in the next few years. This is a big push the government is making. We have to make sure that all of those new properties aren't suffering these same problems, you know, with let's be honest, a building industry that in some ways seems to have said, well, nobody stopped us doing this, so somehow it's not their fault. I think we have absolutely got to make sure that we are both remediating the problem, not just in Grenfell, but across all of these tower blocks, and making sure that new properties are built to a good standard, and in particular that they're not flammable. I mean, that's basic.
Emma, as we look to the future, we know that there's going to be a Grenfell memorial of some kind. The building will be deconstructed, but there are huge concerns, aren't there, from local people about what impact that could have on their health. They've seen firefighters have some health conditions which they are linking in some cases to being present at Grenfell. What do you want to see happen now in terms of a memorial and protecting the health of local residents?
Oh, absolutely. The health issue is huge. A lot of people are really anxious about it. They want blood tests, they want DNA blood tests, to reassure them they're not about to get cancer, because there is such a thing. No, they're not doing that. They do enhanced health tests, which are pretty much what you get for asthma, and that's not good enough. It's really not good enough. They have to reassure people that it's going to be safe. The whole issue about deconstructing the tower, which, as you say, is very, very contentious. There are people who can't wait for it to go, and I'm one of those, but it's not about me. And there are people who want it to remain until the charges and so on. But the engineering reports which I've read are pretty frightening, actually. Okay. It should come down, sadly.
Emma, thank you very much for joining us.